Hi, my name's Imogen, I'm 19 years old and I'm currently on a gap year. That means that I've applied to university twice now, and both times I have not been to a single university open day. With the current situation, the open days that are meant to happen in June have not been going ahead, and there's still no guarantee that in September open days are going to go ahead as usual. So I'm here today to help you pick a university without having to visit the open days. The first thing you'll want to look at is the course. Although a lot of the compulsory modules stay the same, a lot of the optional modules change and vary from university to university. So even though it might seem that lots of the courses are very similar on the face of it, make sure that you look at the optional modules and really dig into the detail to make sure that you're really going to enjoy the course at each one of your 5 choices of university. One way to cut down your options for university is to check which universities actually do your courses. One prime example of this is veterinary medicine, which is only taught at about 10 institutions in the whole of the UK. That means if you want to go and study vet med, you've got to put 5 choices down on your UCAS form, or 4 because one of them is another option, but anyway. You've got to put 4 choices down on your UCAS form and you've only got 10 to choose from. That's going to massively help you make decisions. However, if you're looking at studying a course like history, for example, where there's over 170 courses of history all over the UK, you'll want to look more specifically within your field at what interests you the most. So it might be ancient history, it might be modern history, or it might be economic history. And then you'll want to look for where those courses are taught. And all in all, this should help you cut down your choices as a first step. My second tip would be to look at the additional components that you can do with your course. When I was looking last year for politics and international relations, I found lots of courses that were so similar, and I really liked them at all universities. However, I noticed that there was this thing called quantitative methods. Quantitative methods is using statistical methods to analyse findings in social sciences, and I found out that this also really helps with job prospects, as it involves a bit of maths in your degree and therefore makes you a lot more employable. The key way to check whether you can do additional components with your degree is go to UCAS, go to the UCAS apply page, click on where you can put in your university and your university options, type in your university, then start typing in the name of your degree, so for example politics, and it will bring up all the different courses that have politics, and that might be with a year abroad, it might be with a placement year, it might be with statistical methods. It really depends, and you need to have a look through them all and decide whether you want to do a placement year or whether you want to do your year abroad, and make sure that you're actually applying for the right course. The second thing you'll want to look at is the type of university. If you have location-specific hobbies, so you need to be at certain universities to access certain equipment, then you'll want to make sure that you're actually applying to those universities. For example, I do a lot of work with charities, and so I wanted to be in an area where there was a large NGO presence, and that explained why I applied to Edinburgh and why I applied to Manchester, because they're large cities and therefore they're going to have charity work available. You're going to want to look at Russell Group universities. Now, Russell Group universities are a self-selected group of 24 universities in the UK which are more research-based. And I know that Russell Group universities are a really contentious issue, and a lot of people won't talk about them for that reason. But I think it's really important to mention that just because you are bright or you have the grades that you need to go to a Russell Group university, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's going to be the best fit for you. And there are loads of other universities that have really great reputations that aren't in Russell Group. And so, for example, Bath or St Andrews, they aren't in Russell Group, but they're also really good universities, and a lot of employers will look on them really favourably. If you're somebody who prefers more practical work, then a Russell Group university really won't suit you very well. One example of this is that at the University of Nottingham you can study something called zoology, but if you go to Nottingham Trent, which is just down the road, you can study zoo biology, and that's a much more practical course, and therefore it'll be a lot more suited to you if that's what you prefer. It's not necessarily about going for the university name, but also looking at whether you prefer research or whether you prefer being more hands-on in your learning. Now, the third thing you're going to want to look at is the location of your university. The first thing I would say to consider is the transport network and whether you're able to get home easily. So for example, I was applying to both Manchester and Warwick, and even though Manchester is actually further away than where I live, Warwick does not have as many transport connections, and so it's not as easy to get to Warwick, and I can get home quicker from Manchester. The second thing to consider under location is whether you prefer a more campus feel or a city feel to your university. If you really like nightlife, then you're probably not going to want to be in a really quiet campus where you've only got a couple of clubs available on campus and you're going to have to travel for miles to get to a city. And I guess this is all about weighing up what's most important to you about your university experience. Is it nightlife? Is it the culture of the local city? Or is it green space? The first two of these you can find out all about on the Student Room. The Student Room is a brilliant forum which I'm sure many of you have heard of, which is packed with past students and future students and current students of loads and loads of different universities who can tell you about the feel of the university. And just as you would at an open day have a conversation with one of the current students, you can do the exact same over the internet without having to visit the university. Secondly, if you're interested in the buildings and the amount of green space around a university, just use Google Maps. You can literally plop yourself in the middle of a university campus and walk all the way around the campus just as you would at an open day. The final really important thing to consider with location is the cost of living. In general, the north of England and Scotland tends to be cheaper, however there are a few exceptions to this. For example, Durham or Edinburgh or St Andrews are really quite expensive places. And if you're looking to get a job whilst you're at university, then you're not going to want to be in a university that's literally based in quite a small village, because there's not going to be many jobs going, particularly for students. The next thing you're going to want to consider is the entry requirements. You want to ask yourself, are these entry requirements achievable? Most of you will have 5 options on your UCAS form, and what you're going to want to do with those is put in 2 aspirational universities, so universities with 1 or 2 grades above your predicted grades as their entry requirements. And then you're going to want to put in 2 universities that match your predicted grades, so they're pretty similar, maybe 1 grade below. And then you're going to want a backup university, so this is a university that is maybe a couple of grades below what you're predicted, and it's just in case something goes wrong on the day or your exams don't go as planned. Looking a little bit further along the UCAS process, you have to firm and insure your universities, and so I would always say do not insure a university that has higher entry requirements than your firm, because you're almost definitely going to end up in clearing, because if you miss your firm choice, you're then also going to have missed the grades for your insurance choice. Another thing to consider when looking at university is which assessment type suits you better. Do you prefer coursework or do you prefer exams? Lots of different universities will publish on their websites whether their courses say 60% exams and 40% coursework, or 40% exams and 60% coursework. If you absolutely hate the idea of an exam, then do not go for a university that is 100% exams. Kind of goes without saying, but it's really important to look at the breakdowns and make sure universities you're applying to suit your style of learning. And finally, when we're talking about entry requirements, it's worth looking at the entry requirements, and this is particularly relevant for those of you who are still picking your sixth form options, to make sure that where you're looking at going also matches up with your entry requirements. And this can vary greatly even within the same course. One example of this is architecture. If you study architecture at Bath University, you either need to have maths or physics A-level. However, if you want to study architecture at Liverpool University, then you're going to need to have an art portfolio to show, and there's no subject requirement. This also tells you more about the course itself. It suggests that at Bath there's going to be more focus on the mathematical side of the course, whereas at Liverpool it's going to be more art and design focused. There is a lot of focus when you're looking for universities on graduate prospects, and I think some of the statistics around this can be a little bit misleading. For example, there's a statistic that a lot of universities use, which is 1 year after finishing a degree, are most of the students in further work or further study. And this doesn't account for students who are taking a gap year or students who can't work for another reason. And I think that's really quite misleading, because a gap year can be one of the most useful things in your life. Instead, I would recommend using average salary information for, say, 5 years after your degree if you have that available, because that's going to give you a more representative view of how students go to fare in the world of work for many years after their degree. The other thing to think about with graduate prospects is thinking long term. For example, I really loved a course at Manchester University in 2019 when I applied, called International Disaster Management and Humanitarian Response. But it's a really niche course, and one of the things that I don't want to rule out in the future is teaching. I know this is crazy because both my parents are teachers, but anyway, one thing I don't want to rule out in the future is teaching. And for teaching, you really do need to have a kind of key subject, or a subject that really links into a specific subject that you could teach at school. And although I loved this course to pieces, I was really worried that this would kind of affect my future in terms of being able to go into teaching. And so for that reason, I decided that that wasn't necessarily the right course for me. The next thing to think about, which is only relevant for a few degrees, is professional accreditation. So for example, if you're doing law or you're doing psychology, you're going to want to make sure your course has the correct professional accreditation, because this means when you finish your degree, you're going to be able to go straight into work and you're not going to have to do extra qualifications, which is just going to take more time and probably more money. The next thing to look at, and this isn't necessarily the most obvious thing, is financial support. Not all of the scholarships that are available at a variety of different universities are means tested, and I'm going to use myself as an example for this. So when I was looking for universities, one thing that really drew me towards Royal Holloway University was the fact they had something called the Future Leaders Scholarship. And this is for students who were predicted AAA or above and wanted to come to their university, and it would pay your tuition fees for all 3 years if you were successful. There were only 3 people who got this, and unfortunately I wasn't one of them, but I was really glad that I applied, and I was really glad that that opportunity was open to me. The next thing that I will admit is really useful, and it is quite similar to an open day, are offer holder days. I've just attended a couple of offer holder days online, and I found that even those were really useful. However, offer holder days give you a chance to meet the specific students on your course where you might not necessarily have that opportunity at an open day. They also give you the opportunity to meet prospective offer holders who might be on your course, and it really does help you to work out whether they're the people that you could gel with, whether this university is right for you. Offer holder days are often smaller scale and sometimes happen when students are still in the university, so it gives you a much more accurate portrayal of what the university is like on a day-to-day basis, as opposed to a weekend when open days happen, or maybe on a Wednesday afternoon when students are often off campus doing sports. Additionally, by putting in your 5 UCAS choices and then deciding which offer holder days you're going to want to go to, you're probably only going to pick 2 or 3 offer holder days, and you're not therefore going to have this big scope of universities which you want to go and visit at open days. Finally, I just want to say a little bit more about universities putting out videos and online events. I would say that these are just as useful as going to visit university. A lot of the time, open days are just about buildings and biscuits, honestly. So what I would suggest is go and grab yourself a biscuit from downstairs, sit with your laptop, go for a little walk around the campus on Google Maps, and then sit down to watch an online video or go to an online open day, and you're going to find out exactly the same information as you would when you're actually at the university. So guys, that is the end of this video. I hope that you found something in here useful. I know it's a really difficult time to be applying to university at the moment, and if you'd like to see more videos like this, then be sure to smash a huge thumbs up, leave me a comment down below, and definitely hit that subscribe button and turn the little bell on so that you are notified every time I post. I hope you have a lovely day and see you next time.